Hello everyone and welcome back to Ian's Innovations. Today, rather than expressing my love for video game that I have known for a good amount of time, this video will mark the first time I review a game with an open mind and give out my own opinion. And the game that I'll be reviewing today will be SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Before I begin reviewing the game itself, I'll provide context on it for those that don't know. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated is an HD remaster of SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, a SpongeBob game that released on October 31st, 2003 on multiple platforms. It was released for PS2, Xbox, and GameCube and was a 3D platformer developed by Heavy Iron Studios. It also released for PC and Game Boy Advance but were developed by different developers and weren't 3D platformers. The console versions would receive a massive cult following from players and SpongeBob fans alike, who praised the game for its fun gameplay and recapturing the fun of the show. For years, fans of the original have been begging for a full-blown remake, and eventually, their wishes came true when on June 5th, 2019, THQ Nordic officially announced SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, being this time developed by Purple Lamp Studios instead of Heavy Iron. The game released on June 23rd, 2020 for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. I have my own history with Battle for Bikini Bottom leading up to now. I first found out about the existence of the original game in either some point in 2014 or early 2015 from watching a long play of it on YouTube. And I remember being really intrigued with how many familiar places, characters, and references from the show were integrated into a platformer from the early 2000s. The game led me to also discover other SpongeBob games from the 2000s like the tie-in game for the first SpongeBob movie, Lights, Camera, Pants, Creature from the Krusty Krab, and Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. From hearing all the praise for the original Battle for Bikini Bottom, I wanted to play it for myself to see how good it was. Since I didn't have a PS2, original Xbox, or working GameCube, we decided to get the PC version. My dad got me this 3-game bundle that included Battle for Bikini Bottom, Employee of the Month, and the PC version of Lights, Camera, Pants. But because we didn't do our research, as we were installing it and I saw preview screenshots of the game, I quickly found out that the PC version wasn't a 3D platformer like the console version, and was instead a point-and-click game with several mini-games, and I was left disappointed. I remember I played it for a bit the day we put the disc into my computer, and then I never played that version again. By the way, I did and still do have a Wii and a GameCube controller, so I don't know why we didn't just get the GameCube version since the Wii is backwards compatible with GameCube games. But whatever, I guess. Later, I gave Employee of the Month a shot and did play it for a good amount of time, and to this day I never touched the PC version of Lights, Camera, Pants. After we did do our research, I decided I'd want to play most of the old SpongeBob games mentioned before on the PS2. So in June of 2015, my dad won an eBay auction for an original PS3 model that was backwards compatible with PS2 games. Along with that, we also purchased a used copy of the SpongeBob movie game to test it since it was the cheapest old SpongeBob game we could find for PS2 on Amazon. I really liked the game for how it followed the movie, its satisfying gameplay, and how it got more difficult the further you progressed. Though I remember playing through the entire game once, and it has been a couple years since I last played it. After that, the next old SpongeBob game I got was Creature from the Krusty Krab, but we bought the Wii version since at the time we thought the PS2 version was too expensive on Amazon. And let's just say that some of the motion controls left me more frustrated than having a fun time, so I never finished the game because of that. After those two games, my interest in trying to play more kinda waned at the time, and I started getting into other games over the next couple of years, so I never got around to playing the original Battle for Bikini Bottom. Because of that, I can't properly compare Rehydrated to the original in its entirety, but with my history with the original out of the way, let's now actually review Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Rehydrated is pretty much a near one-to-one remake of the original, with the same plot, same characters, same levels, and same gameplay. There are other things that are still the same, but I'll get to them later. Alright, so what's the game's story? Well, Plankton comes up with another plan to steal the Krabby Patty formula by using his newly built Duplicatotron 3000 that creates an army of obedient robots. However, he accidentally leaves a switch to "Don't Obey," and the robots go out across Bikini Bottom and wreck mayhem. Meanwhile, SpongeBob and Patrick wish to have real robots play with instead of toy robots. And on the next day, SpongeBob sees the robots' destruction and at first believes their wish came true. So it's up to him, along with other familiar characters, to clear out and sort the robots from Bikini Bottom. So yeah, the story is simple, but hey, that's fine, since this is SpongeBob, and no one would really go into something SpongeBob related and expect a plot that is deep, complicated, and serious. Now that we've seen the intro cutscene, let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay of Rehydrated is the same as the original, with it being a 3D platformer collectathon. At the beginning, you play as SpongeBob and explore the first part of the Bikini Bottom hub area. SpongeBob has the usual melee attack and double jump, but also has unique bubble moves like launching into the air and ground pounding to solve puzzles, break objects, and fight robots. Later he unlocks more abilities like the bubble bowl that lets him throw a bubble bowling ball, and a cruise bubble ability that lets him fire a controllable bubble torpedo to fire at robots and objects. In some instances in levels, SpongeBob can bungee jump on a hook to usually earn a collectible. The first level you go through is Jellyfish Fields, where SpongeBob first encounters robots. This level is also where you play as Patrick for the first time. Patrick is different from SpongeBob. He can pick up and throw tikis and throw fruit to hit buttons or defeat robots from a distance, as well as freezy fruit to temporarily freeze water, or goo as it's called in the game, and walk on it before it thaws. Patrick can also body slam on robots or temporarily stun and throw them. Well, in Rehydrated, it sometimes doesn't work for some reason, and that led to a lot of deaths on my first time playing Jellyfish Fields. Also, is it just me, or is the fact that the throw fruit looking like a watermelon supposed to be a reference to this scene from the season 1 episode, Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost?
A banana appeal to your liking, your incorporealness.
One watermelon, go back fresh from the manure field, your spookiness.
In the second level, Downtown Bikini Bottom, you play as Sandy for the first time. Unlike SpongeBob and Patrick, Sandy can glide through air using her lasso somehow, and can swing across gaps using these floating Texas hooks. She can also lasso robots from a distance, and new to Rehydrated is being able to lasso within mid-air, which was very helpful in some situations. Although strangely, Sandy doesn't have proper introduction when you first play as her like Patrick. You just swap as her from SpongeBob after Gary tells you to. It was like this in the original, and it's still like this in Rehydrated. It should also be known that Purple Lamp Studios had no access to the original Battle for Bikini Bottom's code, so they had to recreate the feel and controls from the ground up. The levels in Rehydrated are the same from the original. A lot of them are familiar places from the show that appeared throughout seasons 1 and 3 since the original came out around that time. And I already mentioned Jellyfish Fields and Downtown Bikini Bottom, but you also explore places like Goo Lagoon, Rock Bottom, the Murmur Lair, Sand Mountain, Kelp Forest, and SpongeBob's Dream. These levels are still detailed enough to make you feel like you're in the show, only with better graphics. As you progress through the game, you unlock more of the Bikini Bottom hub area to go to more levels and do more tasks. The layout of the hub is still the same, with even the police station where you could see details on all robot enemies in the game. In Rehydrated, they kept all the cool little references from the original, like how when you walk up to the candy machine at the beginning of the level Rock Bottom, the bus stops by and leaves just like in the season 1 episode. Or when you go into Sandy's tree dome, SpongeBob makes the same face he did when he first entered this place in the episode Tea at the Tree Dome. Rehydrated added in some new references to things that came out after the original, like how in Squidward's dream you could see portraits of handsome Squidward, or one of SpongeBob and Patrick's new idol animations are their surprise faces from the first movie. In the levels, you can swap to play as different characters using these bus stops. In each level, you can swap from playing as SpongeBob Patrick or SpongeBob and Sandy. There is no level where you play as both Patrick and Sandy, and it was like this in the original. Occasionally there are moments in levels where you slide at high speeds. These are some of my favorite parts of the game, and the level Sand Mountain is a major highlight of this. I also like how each of the playable characters have their own sliding animation. There are 3 collectibles in the game. The main collectible are the golden spatulas. You use these to unlock levels and more of the Bikini Bottom hub world, and there are a total of 100 in the game. Throughout the game, you pick up these things called shiny objects. They come in different colors and each color has a different value. For example, red is the most common and is the least valuable, while purple is the rarest color and is the most valuable. You can use shiny objects to lock paths and challenges from clams and levels, but they are mainly used to trade with Mr. Krabs for golden spatulas, with the price going up with each one. Though in Rehydrated they made this harder with the price going up by 3,000 for each golden spatula, whereas in the original it went up by 500 for each one. At least until the 1.0.3 patch for Rehydrated, where the price for each spatula got reduced back to how it was in the original, probably due to players complaining of the difficulty with the high prices. The other collectible in the game are Patrick's socks, in which Patrick explains at the start of the game that robots stole his entire sock collection that he apparently has. There are a total of 80 socks hidden across the game, and with each 10 you return to Patrick, you'll get a golden spatula. Now, in the original and Rehydrated, it's never really made clear why SpongeBob needs golden spatulas other than that it's a collectible, but I'm pretty sure they are a reference to Season 1 episode Plankton, and the same about them can be said for a lot of platformers with collectibles. Also, the placements of the golden spatulas and socks are the same as the original, but I heard that they changed some of the placements of the shiny objects. The player's health is represented as SpongeBob's underwear. You start off with carrying up to 3, but throughout the Bikini Bottom hub, you can find 3 golden underwear which all increases your maximum health to 6. Throughout the game are these tikis. There are different kinds of tikis with their own abilities. For example, the wooden tikis can be broken in one hit. The thunder tikis will blow up when you get too close or when you hit them from a distance. These can either work in your advantage or against you. The shh tikis will disappear when you get close unless you sneak up to them as SpongeBob. Tikis can also be destroyed to earn shiny objects. Rehydrated does get more challenging the further you keep playing, with more difficult platforming in later levels and more robots introduced with unique strategies to take them out. Of course, that infamous Rube Goldberg ball puzzle in the Mermaid lair took forever to do just to get that golden spatula, though I like it how there's an in-game achievement for finishing it in Rehydrated. The Kelp Forest cave section was still a little tedious with having to keep switching from SpongeBob and Patrick, and at one point I got confused with one of the stone tiki pressure plates I need to do so I could continue with the level. However, just like the original, you don't have to get all 100 golden spatulas in Rehydrated. The final boss requires 75, so you don't need to find all of Patrick's socks or do all 8 bargains with Mr. Krabs. Or hell, you could even skip a level or two. So it's a good thing that the game isn't forcing you to do a task that you might not particularly like. If you don't like it, you can just skip it if you want. You can revisit any level and go to any specific part to obtain golden spatulas just from the pause screen. And with Rehydrated they added a new map that marks each level. There are boss fights in Rehydrated, with a total of 7 in the campaign. These 7 are the same as the original, those being 4 robot bosses and 3 non-robot bosses. King Jellyfish is the first boss you fight and is encountered in the first level. I did have a bit of trouble fighting him for the first time, but that was mainly because this was my first time playing the game. Next you fight Robo Sandy into Poseidon before accessing the second third of the hub world. You play as SpongeBob and Patrick when fighting this boss, and it wasn't that hard for me. Though I don't think I'm completely satisfied with how she appears in Rehydrated compared to the original. In the Mermaid lair, you fight the villain known as Prawn. He's a character thought up by Heavy Iron Studios for the original Bikini Bottom, and he has never made an appearance in the show.
Personally, I thought pink made you very pretty.
Really?
Sure, pretty stupid. Yikes. What is that yellow thing? Some kind of mold?
I'm not mold, I'm a sponge. There's a cellular difference. A cellular difference!
Yeah, thanks for the lesson, Dr. Science. See you later, Pinky.
Oh, and he was voiced by Doug Lawrence, the guy who voices Plankton and Larry the Lobster. Before accessing the final part of the hub world, you fight Robo Patrick in the industrial park. You play as SpongeBob and Sandy when fighting this boss, and the fight was a bit challenging. Though like Robo Sandy, I'm not really a fan of Robo Patrick's redesign in Rehydrated. I mean, I think he looked more intimidating in the original with his darker color palette and different mouth design. At the end of the Flying Dutchman's graveyard level, you fight the Flying Dutchman himself as Sandy. It's a decent fight with testing you on her abilities. And the last two bosses are SpongeBob Steel Pants and Robo Plankton. You battle them as SpongeBob in the Chum Bucket, the place where this whole plot started. In the first part of the fight, you fight SpongeBob Steel Pants in the same way you fought the other bosses before. But after his health bars out, the robot grows bigger and SpongeBob goes inside his robot self to neutralize him while also utilizing his moves and abilities. During both parts of the battle, Robo-Plankton shows up at times and you must hit him with SpongeBob's cruise bubble. And unlike Robo, Sandy, and Patrick, SpongeBob Steel Pants' redesign in Rehydrated actually doesn't look that bad. I think it's because of the darker eyes. One of the things that you can't not bring up when discussing both the original Battle for Bikini Bottom and Rehydrated is the music. The original featured a pretty good soundtrack of a lot of variety, and the soundtrack has apparently been remixed for Rehydrated, but I'm having trouble noticing any difference. Rather than just using the generic SpongeBob music from the show, the original and Rehydrated have a variety of original music. Some tracks like the ones in Jellyfish Fields and Downtown Bikini Bottom sound like they could be from the show, while a lot of the tracks like the one in the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard might not sound like they could even be from SpongeBob, they still sound really good and do fit with the level they play in. The Jellyfish Fields theme makes you feel joyful and excited when going into the first level. You may remember when I used the original version of the music in my 2-year anniversary video. The music in Rock Bomb sounds kind of unsettling and makes you feel like you're really deep in a dark part of the ocean. This is one of my favorite tracks, and I used the original music before in 2 of my Little Nightmares videos. The Robo Patrick's theme at first makes you think of Patrick, but as it continues you are reminded that it's not him and are disturbed. The kelp forest theme makes you feel like you're in a jungle-like environment. The music that plays during large robot fights and non-robot bosses sounds upbeat with its techno sounds and gets you in for the fight. I remember I first heard the original version of this theme and the Jellyfish Fields theme in this old SpongeBob Roblox game called Plankton's Dream Scheme from over 6 years ago. Also, the music in SpongeBob's Dream is an extended version of this theme, and it also sounds pretty good. Lastly, the theme that plays during the final boss does a good job of making this part feel like the end of the game. And those are just a few examples of this great soundtrack. Now that we've talked about the soundtrack, I think it would be fitting to transition to talking about the voice acting in Rehydrated. and how it was handled in Rehydrated is one of my least favorite aspects of the game. So, Nickelodeon made the decision to not have the voice actors return to record new dialogue for Rehydrated, and instead simply just reuse the archived dialogue from the original, and I think this was stupid. So in the original, a lot of the characters from the show appear and were voiced by their original actors, with the exceptions of Mermaid Man and Mr. Krabs, who were both instead voiced by the actor Joe White.
Easy. I just clear my mind. Money, money, money. Now listen here, boy. You know that I'll give you golden spatulas if you bring me shiny objects. But I'm going to sweeten the deal. If you can break all the tikis here at the Sea Needle, I'll give you a bonus golden spatula.
Huh? What? Oh, yeah, it's that Sponge kid. And now, what was I supposed to tell you?
The fact that these two characters weren't voiced by the original actors has often been cited as one of, if not, the biggest criticism of the original. As for why they didn't voice him in the original, well, for Mr. Krabs' usual actor, Clancy Brown, it is often known that when it comes to the SpongeBob video games, he wants to get paid more money than the other actors, which is very ironic. Due to this, a lot of Mr. Krabs' appearances in games had him either be voiced by a different actor, or be mute like with SpongeBob's Atlantis SquarePantis, or not appear at all like with Creature from the Krusty Krab. Whenever Clancy Brown does voice him in games, he'd often not have a lot of dialogue, like with the first movie tie-in game, Plankton's Robotic Revenge, and SpongeBob Hero Pants. The only real exception to this was with Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, where he had a good amount of dialogue. As for Mermaid Man, I personally don't know why his original actor, Ernest Borgnine, didn't voice him in the original. If you know why, then please let me know in the comments. Back when Rehydrated was first announced, I was really hoping that they'd get Clancy Brown to voice Mr. Krabs in it, but I knew at the time doing the same for Mermaid Man would have been impossible since Ernest Borgnine unfortunately passed away back in 2012. But I could have at least gotten someone to do a better Mermaid Man impression. No offense to Joe White, but I don't think his Mermaid Man impression is that good. But alas, THQ Nordic and Purple Lamp had no choice but to reuse Joe White's old recordings.
Yes! Yes, I do!
Oh no. It looks like one of the villains is broken free.
What's that? An evildoer on the loose? Who is it? Man Ray? The atomic flounder? The dirty bubble?
I honestly feel bad for kids of today playing Rehydrated and having to endure the same issue that kids from the early 2000s went through when playing the original. Luckily, Barnacle Boy was voiced by his original actor, Tim Conway, in the original Battle for Bikini Bottom, and when Rehydrated was announced, I knew they would reuse his lines since Tim Conway also unfortunately passed away in 2019.
Pay attention, kid. This is serious stuff. Now, if we don't get this robot thing resolved, Shady Shoals will shut down and I'll have to move back in with my son and his wife and his 4 screaming kids. Now, you see that vent on the other side of the museum?
Yes, sir.
That's where you exit the museum. Good luck, kid.
Now, if they did bring in the actors for the development, they could have done a lot more than just re-record their old lines. So like, if there was a line of dialogue from the original that they thought didn't sound right, they could just fix that line. They could also rewrite some dialogue to include more jokes, since the writing in the original wasn't exactly like the show. Now, there were a few lines that did make me laugh, like this one.
Well done, SpongeBob. Now, how's about giving old Mr. Krabs that shiny gold? I'll give you promotion.
A promotion?
Sure. You'll get a whole extra 10 seconds added to your break time.
Woo! 20-second break! Do I dare? No, I'm sorry, Mr. Krabs. As enticing as that sounds, I can't give this to you. I need every golden spatula I can get.
I understand, boy. I'll just dock 30 seconds from your break time instead.
Whoa! That means I have a negative 20-second break. Thanks, Mr. Krabs.
There could have definitely been a lot more jokes put in, since that's one of the things SpongeBob is best known for. They could have also done some things like rework the segment in Downtown Bikini Bottom to give Sandy proper introduction like Patrick. I do know that Purple Lamp Studios did not want to alter a lot of the original, and wanted to stay faithful to it. I can respect them for wanting to stay true, but I can't respect Nickelodeon not wanting to have new dialogue be created for Rehydrated where they could have easily done that. However, as I said earlier in the video, Rehydrated isn't an exact one-to-one remake of the original. I've already pointed out a few things like the increased golden special prices for Mr. Krabs before the third patch, and some of the robot bosses redesigns. But there are multiple other differences that I'll mention. Of course, the graphics are a great improvement from the original, with characters being more detailed and mostly being more expressive. For example, Mrs. Puff now has improved animations and expresses a lot more naturally, whereas in the original she constantly looked like she was on drugs. Some of the levels got a more notable graphical improvement. Kelp Forest looks more bright and clear, making it one of the more beautiful levels in the game. This was a much needed improvement, since Kelp Forest is often the most panned level in the original for being too dark. Rock Bottom features more neon lights littered across the level, and I thought this was a neat touch. Sand Mountain is now entirely covered in sand instead of what appeared to be snow in the original. I was a little iffy on this change, but I guess Purple Lamp maybe wanted to be more accurate to how this place appeared in the show, and for the level's appearance to reflect its name. Although I'm not a fan of how foggy the level is in Rehydrated. Other changes and details added include how the robot's eyes are green when idle but turn red when chasing you. SpongeBob and Patrick have new running animations when being chased by robots. The cruise bubble torpedoes now followed in third person rather than first person. Patrick now slides on his back rather than his butt. The golden spatulas and socks are now contained in bubbles rather than just floating. Red danger areas appear to mark where projectiles like the ones from Tartar, Chuck, and Robo Patrick will land. There is now a white target to indicate what you're aiming at instead of gloved hands. The Duplicatotrons and Mr. Krabs' Dream now have a protective bubble that reforms shortly after breaking it, so you can no longer cheese this section like in the original. And I noticed that in Patrick's Rock, there is no gramophone that you can mess around with. One change in Rehydrated I initially really dislike is what they originally did with the movie theater in the Bikini Bottom hub. In the original battle for Bikini Bottom, you could pay a whopping 40,000 shiny objects to enter the theater, or you can view concept art of the game, which is really cool to see. In Rehydrated, you still pay the 40,000 shiny objects to get into the theater, but instead of concept art, you could originally just view still images of the game. What? That was a massive letdown. I remember when I got access to the theater and saw what it offered in Rehydrated, I thought, really? That's it? I spent all that time grinding for that many shiny objects just to see still images of the game? Luckily, the theater got fixed to include concept art for Rehydrated like the original in the 1.0.3 patch, but this should have been like this on release. A brand new addition for Rehydrated is the multiplayer Horde mode. In it, you and another player can choose to play SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, along with new playable characters exclusive to this multiplayer mode, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, Gary, and Robo Plankton, and fight waves of robots and Robo Squidward, which was actually a cut boss idea from the original now repurposed into this Horde mode. Each of the 7 playable characters have their own unique attacks here, though the main 3 playable characters don't have some of their abilities from the campaign. I would give you my thoughts on this new Horde mode, but because I don't have a second PS4 controller and I don't want to pay for PlayStation Plus again, I haven't tried it out for myself, but from what I heard, it gets boring very quickly, and just from looking at it, it doesn't look like as much time and effort was put into making it. Now, leading up to the release of Rehydrated, one of my worries was that the game wouldn't be completely polished out, and unfortunately, that worry kinda ended up becoming true. One of my issues has to do with the visuals. Yes, they are definitely more detailed than the original, but I can't help but feel that at times they look a bit too bright and saturated, especially with Goo Lagoon. Some of the textures look broken, like with the goo in this part and the glowing green liquid in that part. Some audio glitches like when you respawn in the beginning part of Goo Lagoon. These loud sound effects play for no reason.
As long as these pits are square and this sponge is Bob, I will not let Bikini Bottom down.
When a cutscene begins playing in the Robo Sandy boss fight, Johnny the Fish announcer continues to commentate in the corner of the screen as if it was still gameplay, and this was pretty distracting.
Wow, I've never seen such an electrifying match!
Your turn, SpongeBob!
Oh?
One of the biggest criticisms are the game's pop-ins and draw distance. Every time you load in a new level or cutscene plays, you can first see that not everything has finished loading, and some objects don't appear until you get closer to them, and it's really distracting. Another thing that's distracting is that some of the facial animations look a little off, particularly with Patrick. For example, at the end of the game where he sees SpongeBob steal pants, he smiles, whereas in the original, he had a disgust face. I think I also have an issue with Patrick having really pronounced upper teeth. Like, throughout the franchise, unless it's sometimes for an expression, how often does Patrick have upper teeth? And I checked the original Bikini Bottom, and although he did also have upper teeth, they weren't as pronounced so it didn't look distracting. This is one of those cases where you're so used to seeing something one way that seeing it in another looks really off. Some gameplay modes annoy me, like when you slide into a snowman, or in this case, Sandman when sliding in Sand Mountain. It briefly slows down your movement and ruins the pacing for a second. This wasn't in the original. And in Jellyfish Fields, there was this part where you had to get across this long teeter-totter. When you tried jumping up across the gap, you didn't get off the ground much, and this was with a double jump. This is only the first level, so this shouldn't have been this difficult. Thankfully, this issue got fixed in the 1.0.3 patch, but I will not be forgetting how frustrated I got with that teeter-totter when originally playing this game. Keep in mind that I am playing the PS4 version, and apparently from what I've heard, the Switch version is even worse when it comes to these issues. Though I've already mentioned there have been 3 patches released for Rehydrated that fixed some of the issues, and if any of the other issues that I listed were fixed, then please let me know in the comments. Most of the game's issues can be drawn to one cause, and that would be Nickelodeon. They only gave Purple Lamp Studios just 10 months to develop Rehydrated, which would explain some of the unpolished aspects. I already mentioned Nickelodeon's decision on reusing the old archive dialogue, and from what I've heard, they did this because they believe getting the voice actors to record new dialogue would have made development go on longer. And yet, I don't understand how they were able to remix the old soundtrack, since it's pretty much creating new audio from the ground up. Nickelodeon gave the developers that development timeframe because they initially wanted the game to coincide with the release of the SpongeBob movie Sponge on the Run, which was supposed to release earlier in May 2020, but then COVID-19 happened and the film got getting delayed and delayed until they eventually decided to cancel its theatrical release and instead release it straight on demand for CBS All Access in 2021. At least, the US is getting screwed over this way. The film will release on Netflix in countries excluding the US, Canada, and China on November 5th, 2020. But in Canada, the film already got released in theaters there on August 14th, 2020. The situation for Sponge on the Run is a complete mess. Like, it is extremely unfair that out of all the countries, the US gets the shortest end of the stick when it comes to this particular movie. Yes, I know in the US the cases of COVID-19 are still on the rise, but I think all countries should be treated equally on the release of something new. And because I don't feel like waiting until 2021, I think I'm considering to use a VPN to access the movie on Netflix this November. Either way, I bet the guys at Purple Lamp must be really pissed off that they were forced to rush the game for nothing. If Rehydrated got delayed by a few months to like August or September, or to the time Sponge on the Run releases in most regions, then I honestly would have been completely fine with that, since it would give the developers more time to make it better, and I'm sure we'd handle at least one delay. From looking at the concept art that was added in the 3rd patch, you could tell how much effort Purple Lamp put into Rehydrated. This situation could also explain why the game is priced at only $30 on release, when usually a modern console game is $60 at launch. This also shows that Nickelodeon just isn't taking this game seriously, and that's sad. For the reception of Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, there have been a lot of mixed reviews, but 2 reviews on the game really stick out from the others, and not really in a good way. Those being IGN and GameSpot's review of Rehydrated. IGN gave the game a 5 out of 10 and mainly criticized it for being too kid-friendly and for not changing much from the original. First off, why say it's too kid-friendly? It's freaking SpongeBob. What'd you expect? And second, Rehydrated is supposed to be as faithful to the original as possible, so don't expect a lot of major differences. GameSpot gave the game a 2 out of 10 and mainly criticized it for having a lot of unfair gameplay segments. A 2 out of 10? Do they really think the game is that bad? And to give you an idea of what they think of Rehydrated's difficulty, this is the beginning of the review.
In one section of the puzzle, all you need to do is stand on a button, and that button opens a gate for you to bowl a bubble into so you can progress. The only problem is that during SpongeBob's wind-up animation for bowling, he walks forward. That means you fall off of the button, which closes the gate and prevents you from bowling the bubble where you intended, when you intended.
Oh hey, I don't know if you've thought about, standing at the rear of the pressure plate to hit the button, and they also say this.
Moving platforms are slow, and you have to jump on them often. If you miss them, you end up bored sitting there, looking at an idle animation for too long.
You're playing as a character who could glide across the platforms. If you think this is the game's fault, then you're just bad at the game. I mean, just look at how many dislikes each of their videos have. Hell, some of the comments have more likes than the videos themselves. And this is one reason why I don't often rely on gaming journalists like IGN anymore. Now the thing about reviewing something is that it's okay to have an opinion, but if you don't have valid points that justify your opinion, then people are going to hate on you. As for my thoughts on Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, I think it's a good game. Of course, it has its faults, but I'm still grateful that we even got a remake of the original Bikini Bottom. If it wasn't for the original's growing fans like late night writers, or the game's speedrunning community with people like Shift, then Rehydrated would have never been made. Before this game, the SpongeBob video games weren't in their best time, where after THQ went bankrupt in early 2013, the Nickelodeon video game license was acquired by Activision that same year. With their ownership, they developed and released Plankton's Robotic Revenge in 2013, which received mostly negative reviews and didn't sell too well, and SpongeBob Hero Pants in 2015, which received even worse reviews and sold even worse. Then in 2018, Activision's Nickelodeon license expired and it was acquired by THQ Nordic, which by the way is a different company using the THQ trademark. They then announced their plans to publish more Nickelodeon games that year, and the rest is history. For my final verdict on SpongeBob Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I think that's a fair score. It's a decent game on its own, but it could have been so much better if Nickelodeon gave Purple Lamp more time and freedom. I completed the game 100% and this was where I got my first Platinum trophy for my PlayStation account. And it's nice that you still get that secret ending when being rehydrated 100%. Who knows, maybe one day I might get the original Bikini Bottom on console to properly see how it compares to Rehydrated. Or maybe one day I will revisit the first movie tie-in game, and maybe even review it on my channel. Thank you for watching my review of SpongeBob Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Be sure to like and subscribe, and there are still more games I want to talk about. Goodbye!